We do flashcards. My kids will love this. They call it Ding Ding because I basically have, like, if we're doing letter names, letter sounds, or sight words, we basically have the card pack, and within the pack, I will have like special cards that have stickers on them with race cars for the day, or whether it's hearts or something, whatever the thing is, and they have them mixed in. So we just go around, it's back and forth with that, but it's very quick and very fast. But if you get the little special card behind your card, that's Ding Ding, and you get to have that one too, and that's great. We don't count them because that causes problems. We just are glad we got Ding Ding cards, and so we go through that whole thing. But you're like, we're gonna play Ding Ding, we're gonna play Ding Ding. That's just, it's such a nothing, it's such a simple thing. But that takes a flashcard drill and just makes it so much better.
Yeah.
So things like that, a lot of visual things. If you can get a visual cue for anything, we have a lot of children who have the problem with the letter U saying instead of saying ya, because you and ya and all that stuff. And so again, I made a little character up that looks like a U, and he has legs and he has arms, and his barbells, and that's all that. That took care of the problem for those kids. As soon as they see that, immediately, so they'll be doing that kind of thing. That's the sort of thing that changes them from not doing it to being able to do it, and it keeps them really engaged. So that's the sort of thing I think you want to do is keep it moving. Keep it moving, I think, and keep it novel if you can, especially with little ones.
The other thing I do is, a couple years ago, I wrote a grant through Walmart, and I got iPads. So I have 3 iPads, and then I have my own iPad. And so it's gotten funny because we'll say, I don't know, I wonder about that. And the kids will say, well, why don't you Google that? And so, yeah, so just bringing in the iPads and letting them research or watch a video or do different things like that. Because that's the world that we live in, and Google is a verb, so the kids know that if you don't know the answer, you can just Google it. So we don't do it all the time, but just bringing in technology or videos or songs or things like that is always a good way to keep their focus and attention as well.
Plus, there's so many apps. I know
Yes.
we use the Kindles, and for one kid, I was frustrated as a teacher because I couldn't get him to do his, to hold anything. You put a Kindle in front of him, he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
how is this Kindle? It was like I was in competition with the Kindle, but I don't know, I mean, it works.
We have some app fabulous people here because they were in my class showing us all of their aptitude.
That's good. That's good.
So, which is always wonderful. So, since the theme of tonight's session was celebrating elementary literacy specialists, let's do that. What do you enjoy most about your job?
I love the kids. I really do. Every day's a new day with them, which is really nice. I love it when I can show them the progress that they're making as a reader. And I actually just did that with one of mine today. I pulled out a book that I started with him like 2 months ago, and I pulled out one that we were reading today. And the biggest smile that came on his face, like, that's why I teach. That's what I love the most about it. There's a lot of stuff that I could totally do without, but that's in any job, so that's why I do it. That's what I love the most.
In my role now, I guess I would say that walking into classrooms and watching people teach really well is an incredible gift, because there's a lot of bad news out in education, it feels like, and it feels like I'm often pushing a rock up the hill a lot of times, a really big rock, and I think it's easy to get discouraged and in my role, but I can see that, I see the energy that teachers get back from kids, and it makes them teach better, and what you're talking about with the pleasure that kids see in their progress. It's made me realize that I need to be in the classroom more and not on email as much. So, yeah, I'm making adjustments too.
Switch my role.
Yeah, that's right.
I'd say it's the kids too. I mean, sometimes, I know I went for a stretch where I was out of the room for like 3 weeks straight, and it was like, I would try on a break between assessing. I was like running into classrooms, like, I just need to see children. You know, today I had this little boy who was just so excited because it was the first day of SUNY reading lab, And all day, all he kept talking about was that. And, you know, we're walking in the hall, tell me what I get to do. Where do I go? What are we going to do there? You know, that's what it's all about. He struggles, and he's so below grade level, but he loves to read and he loves to write. That's what it's all about. They make your job fun.
I agree. Watching children learn and get excited about that is very rewarding, just to see them. I didn't know there were 3 sounds in that word. They're like, oh, you know, stretch out the word, and they're like, oh, I never heard that. I just thought it was one thing, you know. Now it's 3 things I can hear, and it's like their eyes are like that. So that's fun. It's a very creative profession. I love that, is you won't want to just be stale. So you're always thinking. That's the bad part about it, is you're always thinking about it too. Teachers have a lot of troubles getting away from their jobs because you go home and you're like, okay, everybody else gets a regular life, and teachers are like, how do I fix that kid? How do I do it? You know, you're always trying to do that. You're always thinking, what can I do now? So it's hard. Even on a vacation, it's hard not to sort of have it follow you home. So that's the one thing that's the negative about being creative and fun about teaching. It's hard to drop it too and just be a regular person again.
Okay. Well, before we start our question and answer session, because we are going to have a couple minutes in case you have additional questions, but we do have people who are interested in getting a position as a literacy specialist. So what sorts of tips would you offer them?
I was going to say know about the district that you're interested in. So know what reading program they use, know what assessments they use, be able to, I guess, know the jargon, but don't rely overly on the jargon, because it'll be really clear very fast if you're misusing the jargon, and then it works against you. And I would say don't forget to talk about kids. Don't forget to talk about reading and your enthusiasm for, you know, anything that you've done in your life that shows your enthusiasm for your genuine dedication to working with kids, like, you know, summer camps and, you know, after school programs and whatever else you've done. And knowing about the latest things like that, or try not to speak negatively about something that just is, you know. It's not like we can debate it, or, I mean, that's it. So you better come in like knowing what that means, and I'm sure you're hearing about that. I know you are. I've seen great student teachers coming to our school.
Also, I think if you are like a student teacher, or you're looking to get into a district and you're substituting, you know, making sure obviously you're leaving a good path. You know, if you're subbing in that district, you know, you're starting a good reputation. Not so good that they only want to keep you as a sub, because that's not good either.
True.
But if you're student teaching or you're substituting, and also not to expect that just because you are in a district subbing or student teaching that you A, are going to get an interview, or B, that interview is going to go anywhere. So you really got to sell yourself in an interview. You know, it's really easy to think like, oh, but you already know me, so I don't really have to talk about that, or kind of, you know, nudge the person to the side of you and be like, yeah, that was good. Really sell yourself, because it's hard if you're in a district already to pretend like the people sitting at the table do not know who you are. And I say that from experience, because I did that years ago. I was a first grade classroom teacher before I moved into the reading position. So, you know, I kind of was there, and that's a hard place to be on the other side of that table. So sell yourself. Not only know your district, but know your community. I teach and live in the same community. I own a business in the same community. So know where you are. So not just your school, but know who makes up the population of the kids around you. Because Cortland looks totally different than McGraw looks, than looks what Dryden looks like. That definitely looks like from Ithaca or Lansing, and you're talking a 25-mile radius right there. It's not huge, but they're worlds apart. Those would be my biggest points.
Yeah, I would make sure that you talk like you know what you're talking about, but you don't want to be too confident in what you know, because I was just at an interview committee this past summer. What we're looking for is people that have some background, but that we can take and make the Cortland. We want them to adapt to our culture. We don't want you to just say, oh, well, this is how I do it, and this is how it's going to be, because you're not going to fit into our culture. You know, it's hard, because you want to sell yourself, and you want to be strong there, but, and the other thing too, with the jargon, make sure you do know what you're talking about, you know. I was shocked to hear something like, that makes no sense. I mean, it's crazy, but people do. You want to make sure you know what you're talking about, and if you have things in your portfolio, make sure it's stuff that you've actually done, because, and I know it sounds great, but like they'll talk about that. You say, hey, tell me more about this, and you have to back that up. So, you know, make sure you're confident and you know what you're presenting. You don't want to come off that way. And the other thing too is anytime you're in schools, I mean, the reason I'm in Cortland now is because of where I started back as a sophomore in college. You know, I did my practicum hours, and then I came back, and then it was when you needed a student to do like the 682, I was in the school doing the same thing, and then a long term opened up, and then you need to say the next thing you know, it's like, oh hey, I'm teaching here now. So
That's the same for both of us as well.
yeah, it was my 25 hours back in, I don't even know, whatever.
I agree with everything you've said. You want to be knowledgeable, but you don't want to be a show-off.
Yes.
And you want to look teachable, but you don't want to look incompetent. You're kind of trying to get that balance. You want to look energetic. You want to look like you have the energy and enthusiasm. I have heard somebody say you never leave an interview without saying, I would really like to have this job. Because they sometimes will say, do you have anything else that you'd like to add? And you say, I would really like to have this job. I really believe that my personality will fit with what your needs are. Sell yourself that way without looking, again, overly to the point where you don't need anybody's help at all. So you don't want to be entrenched. So combination of all those things. And I've also mentioned that some interviews are a lot more knowledge-based interviews. They want to know what you know about this, this, this. It's almost like a college test. And then I've been in other interviews in the past that were a lot more of a, tell us what kind of person you are, how do you relate to children? You know, and so you've got to be able to flex depending on what they're going to hit you with. And it's probably good to have a couple examples of how you have done something to kind of back that up. Not a huge long story. They always say make them short. But, you know, have some kind of little anecdotal thing that either shows how you relate to teachers, how you relate to kids, how you relate to parents, how you can relate to the curriculum, something that you can pull out when you need to sort of say, and like this is one time that I did blah, 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 but make it short. And I'm a talker, so you have to be careful. So I'll tell you, be careful too.
I heard that a lot of districts, and I think maybe ours at some levels, are asking people to be able to say the 6 shifts without referring to anything. The 6 shifts in ELA, and I don't know if it was ELA and math, but whoa.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the one other thing I would add is also, I know that some interviews, they will ask, what is the last book you've read on professional things? So you want to have something in your pocket that you bring in of some of the names and the authors of some of the books you've recently read. That would be helpful.
And that's, in Cortland, there's a write, that's what you do while you're waiting to go in. You write about a book you've read. Know what balanced literacy is. Be able to explain what guided reading, what a typical guided reading lesson would look like. You know, what are you going to do when you have a kid who refuses to learn? How are you going to work with that? It's hard because, especially I know like when I was interviewing, I was certified in childhood ed and literacy, so depending on the position you go for, the interviews are so different. The literacy one, they're really going to, you got to know your stuff. They're really going to dig deep, whereas in the classroom interviews, it was more, you know, like management, you know, lessons, things like that, so.
And they have asked, you know, kind of the classroom reading teacher, you know, did you want to be a classroom teacher, or are you really looking to be a reading teacher? Because there is a difference. I mean, there is a difference between the two, and so know that for you. Am I just using this as a stepping stone? Because that will wash over your face. I've sat on interview committees and thought, she's just here for a little while, you know, you can
Yep.
tell. So that question has been asked on committees that I've served on. You know, is it something that you're looking at doing, or are you just kind of a classroom teacher waiting to get into the classroom? My son actually sat on a hiring committee 2 years ago for his science teacher, so know that there are lots, and this is at driving middle school, so know there are lots of districts that will ask you to teach a lesson too, and not just teach to them, but you're teaching to the kids. And so my son sat on a couple different instructional practices, and then he and the other students sat in with the principal and gave the notes on the teachers. And then from that, they chose people, and they kind of were interviewed from there. So that's definitely a style that you see. It used to happen more, and then it kind of faded away, and now it's starting to come back as well. So practical application, definitely.
Well, thank you so much for everything that you've shared. I feel like it's just volumes of information every time. It's always something new, so thank you. Did any of you have any additional questions, just final questions this evening? If you do, please feel free to let us know, and we will follow up with our wonderful panelists. I want to thank all of my colleagues for being here this evening. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you students. I know for all of you, and for our panelists, it's been a long day because many of you have taught all day or subbed all day and then come here. And these ladies have been working all day, and they just worked right on into the night. And we appreciate everything that you do to help us professionalize all of our students. So thank you so much. Let's give them a big hand, please. So once again, I wish you all the best. Please be safe because we have this lovely storm headed our way.